Yeah, so the first overall pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Anthony Edwards out of Georgia. Um, and I think that's the best positional fit out of the three picks, top picks that were considered by a bunch of other teams. And a lot of people were wondering if Minnesota was going to possibly trade down or move the pick for like another young superstar to pair with Cat and D'Lo. But I think in the end, like this is the best positional fit, and I think he has a super high ceiling to go with these two guys. Um, they said after the draft that he's actually grown since the initial measurements, and that's just kind of COVID coming in where they haven't been able to see this guy in person for a really long time. So he's now 6'6" as opposed to 6'5", and 1 inch isn't a lot, but it actually could help him because initially everyone saw him as kind of the two guard spot, but I think he could play a bit of three as well, especially in this like smaller, more skilled NBA. And like he just projects to be like a strong dude. A lot of people were worried about like Andrew Wiggins comparisons because both number one picks,
Right.
shooting guards, can score the
Timberwolves.
ball really well. But I think just like he has a more NBA ready body at this point. What did you think of the pick?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't really have made sense to go with Wiseman or Ball, considering they've got Russell and Cat, and trading might have made sense if there was a team with some sort of asset they were interested in that, like, who really valued Edwards as a pick. But like you said, it is Edwards is kind of the best positional fit for them, like a 2-3 player. So I can't think of any team with a more skilled, more ready, similarly high ceilinged 2-3 that they'd want to switch that out for Edwards somehow. So yeah, it kind of made sense then.
The funny thing that stood out to me about this pick, though, is that in his interview, Edwards talked about kind of so he was initially a football player in his like young days, and in high school he's a really highly touted football prospect, and basically said, actually, no, I want to make a ton more money playing in the NBA. And when picked up basketball, but in his interview recently, he still kind of said that football was his favorite sport,
Huh.
which is not what teams want to hear. But I also think it really shows that like the fact that he was able to kind of convert over the basketball and in a couple of years become a number one overall pick
Yeah,
is that like he has the tools, and there's a lot of research suggesting that like cross training in sports is really great for athletes, like coordination and ability to do different things. So
I value sports IQ a lot too. If you have the
yeah,
ability to play one sport well, I think, and then you have the ability to become the number one draft pick in another sport, then I'm going to assume you have a pretty good IQ for both. And that's a huge asset for me. I'd also say the Timberwolves have been there, done that with this type of player. So now they have some experience to draw and look back at Wiggins and say, what did we do well? What did we not do well?
yeah.
And if that doesn't let them at least reflect and say, okay, here are some mistakes we can avoid, then, well, that would just be horrible on their part and they don't deserve any success.
Yeah. And then the last thing I got to talk about with the Timberwolves is like they just made this pick. It's this shooting guard. And then they go and they give their restricted free agent shooting guard Malik Beasley 4 years, $60 million, and essentially are like, we're going to pay you some big money to come off the bench for us. And I like Beasley. He's a solid player. And I thought it was great that they picked him up in the Nuggets deal way back at the trade deadline. But I mean, he is facing charges for possession of a firearm and like threatening someone on his property with it.
Mm.
And 15 is a lot for someone who you have the rights to and could match a contract that anyone offers him. So I don't know if that was the right call to give your backup shooting guard $15 million when you just selected one with the first overall pick.
Right. Yeah, that would make more sense if they either don't want to start Edwards, which I don't think is the case, or they want him to play three. But
But again, like they have Josh Okogie and Jarrett Culver who could also slot in at one of those guard slots in the starting lineup. So it was a weird decision, and we'll see. Maybe one of those three is on the move, right?
Yeah, I
They
mean,
you
they've got a
lock
lot of depth there now, so
yeah, you lock up the asset, and then down the line, maybe a team shows interest in Beasley. You can flip him for something. Yeah, I guess that takes us kind of the second overall pick. Golden State Warriors select James Wiseman out of Memphis. Uh, Notably, 3 games played at Memphis, and then had to sit out the season due to some eligibility issues. And again, I mean, when you're this high up in the draft, I appreciate teams swinging for the fences. If you try to stay too safe, like you only get the opportunity to select 1, 2, 3 like very few times in your career,
especially
unless
if you're the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, exactly, right. This was a unique opportunity for them to get a player that can continue their dynasty after Steph, Klay, and Dre. That like era is wrapped up. So I
And
really
bolster
like.
that dynasty now, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger news of the night was that Klay Thompson ruptured his Achilles and is done for the year, which is really tough for them. So they're going to actually have to lean on Wiseman a little bit more than they would have liked. But I think he fits great with their system. He has the opportunity to learn a ton from Draymond Green and with Steph and supposedly with Klay, but now they have Jordan Poole as well.
Oubre too as well, right?
Yeah, so there's some shooting around it, and I think he's going to be really successful as like a rim running, super athletic big. And like when looking at his highlights, when he like dunks the ball, it's ferocious. Like he seems like a super high energy player with a lot of upside.
Yeah, and if you're a team who shoots threes as accurately and well as Golden State, then that's the best thing you can do. Have someone that's going to make the team defense that much more conscious of like what's behind us at the rim at all times. So let's see how much he can force the defense to space the floor.
Yeah. I mean, like even we saw in the finals 2 years ago, it was like they had lost Durant. Klay Thompson was playing on one leg. They had DeMarcus Cousins, who was like a shell of his former self, and it was just
I'm trying to
Steph
feel
Curry.
good about that win. Don't take too much away from us.
A win's a win. You can never take away the banner. Always flies. But like Steph Curry's a vacuum, right? When he's healthy, you send 2, 3 players to the perimeter, and so it always opens up. Like that was so beautiful to watch, that like Golden State basketball where Curry would come around a screen, float in the air, throw it like an inside pass through the double team to Draymond, and then Draymond, like the opposing team center has to rotate to stop a layup, and he throws an alley oop to the center, whoever it is, McGee or Looney or Cousins. Probably not Cousins. I don't know if he can even dunk anymore, but like that was just perfection. And I think there's some definite like possibilities of that happening again this year. Like Wiseman's going to be finishing a lot of alley oops from Green, I think, this year, and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, with Curry and Green's playmaking and IQ, then they should be able to give Wiseman some good looks, and hopefully Wiseman can pick some of that up. I'm saying hopefully. I don't know if I want to see this. Well, I want to see smart, fun basketball, but I don't want to see a 70-win season and like a 17-game playoff run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but I don't think the Warriors are the top contender coming out of the West.
No.
Yeah. I guess we'll move on to the third overall pick, and probably the one that people have followed the most over the past couple of years. Lamelo Ball goes to the Charlotte Hornets at 3. He played professionally in Lithuania. He played professionally in the Australian Basketball League last year, and so he opted not to go the college route.
What's your takeaway on that?
I think it works out for some guys and doesn't for others, right? Like you look at Luka Doncic, who, and obviously he's a very special case because he was the MVP of the EuroLeague at 18. And of course he's going to come in and dominate. But there's something to be said about, again, like playing against grown men, right?
Yeah.
I I think you'd have a ton that you can learn by playing against those guys. But in college, there's more of like that Americanized system. And if you're playing for a Coach K or a Calipari or uh, like a Izzo or those types of coaches, that they can really draw up an offense to be centered around their stars and adapt. So I think either way, you're kind of in a good situation when you're a prospect of his caliber. Um, but it
Yeah,
will be interesting to see because now he's going to basically have to run that Hornets team who is kind of looking for a star to build around.
right. And I guess two thoughts on that. First, from what I understand, one of the knocks on him is that he's like an average athlete, not a special athlete. So playing in the college system, he's going to be exposed and play against like the best athletes in the world, essentially. Whereas the Australian and Lithuanian is going to be less of that. So now he's going to have to adapt to that on the fly in the NBA. Just human beings who can do miraculous, remarkable things he's not seen before are going to be the average, not so he's going to have to adapt to that.
Yeah.
And then two, like the biggest upside to his game is like his talent and like offensive IQ and ball handling, playmaking. So you're saying like build a team around him, but he like that kind of player doesn't make a lot happen on its own, I don't think. Like the way you have LeBron who can drive, get four guys on him and just set almost guarantee being able to set up an open look three. They're going to be able to just put one, maybe two guys on him. And if he doesn't have guys who can score really well, then he's probably going to struggle, which I don't know if you want to talk about Hayward now or.
Yeah, well, I want to finish up on Lamelo. Like he's very raw, and his playmaking I think is the best out of any prospect in this draft. So I'm really high on that, and I think like he has the potential here with his size. Like he's 6'7", and his wingspan is 6'10", which is kind of unusual for someone with that playmaking ability. That and like he rebounds really well, and uh, he when he's locked in, he can defend really well. And then you look at his brother Lonzo, who when he's playing well could be one of the top like perimeter defenders at the guard position in the league. I just think it's going to take a lot, but his ceiling is so incredibly high at his size and his like basketball pedigree, where his like brother has come from, and the teams that he's already played for. Like I think he's the thing he has to work on the most is like you said, like he has to become an inside scoring threat in order for him to open up that playmaking. Because right now, like he shot 25% from three
Yeah.
in the Australian league, and a lot of those were just chucks. And his like mechanics are terrible right now, but I think those can get fixed. And like he shies away from contact, so when he's driving into the lane, he'd rather throw up a floater from the elbow than take a tough layup in traffic. So I just those are some of the things he needs to work on. But I think the NBA, the way that everyone can shoot it so well and they really spread out the floor, he's going to have a lot of opportunity, almost like a Trae Young, to just like have five out, and he's going to go to work and be able to spray the ball all over the court. And I think the Hornets are really exciting. And I think now we can dive in that Hayward signing, while it's like a ridiculous amount of money, and I think like all the other teams are kind of saying, thank God we didn't pay him that much. And Charlotte took that on for us. I think he's a good sort of mentor to put in beside Lamelo because he can provide a little bit of that defense. He can provide a little bit of that playmaking, so it's not all on ball, and he can score the ball a lot better than Lamelo can.
Yeah, it's not, they're obviously not really close to being there yet, but with tempered expectations, that could be really interesting in 3 years. But that's going to really come down to, I mean, the patience of management and the mentality of Ball. Like, can he check himself, stay humble, and like diligently work on everything he needs to work on every year without getting too ahead of himself? I'll be interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, like they also have PJ Washington, who was their first round pick the year before. That is a decent fit with this backcourt that they have. I mean, obviously they still have Devontae Graham and they still have Terry Rozier. So they
Gut
are.
feeling is Rozier still there when the season starts?
Uh, I think
Because
yes.
he's got some struggles with Hayward, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I think like Rozier he was underrated last year because he's on a small market team in Charlotte that doesn't really have any stars. But I think he's got some value for teams out there. So they're going to try and see if they can raise his value this season and maybe flip him for something because obviously they're building for 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, that value might tank though if he's not starting as a point guard.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think their lineup projects to be. You could actually even see Ball coming off the bench until they trade Rozier. So it could be a Rozier, Graham, Hayward starting like 1, 2, 3, and Ball coming off the bench, and then once Rozier gets moved, kind of midway through the season, Ball steps into that starting role. You could
Yeah,
shelter him a little bit.
I guess the bubble or the lack of fans is almost a blessing in disguise for Charlotte then, because if they did have fans coming in, that there might
Yeah,
be an impulse from management to say like, hey, we want to make some money,
yeah,
and the best way to make money is get everyone excited against this Ball guy, so
yeah.
we got to start him. So I mean, I don't know if you're right and or if they're going to give him the start, but it's kind of nice that that impulse is going to be checked and they don't even have that option available.
Yeah,